The Goodbye Galaxy series had disappointing sales numbers, only a third of the original trilogy. This was due to releasing the final game through FormGen instead of as part of a second trilogy through Apogee. With that said and done, they still had a thorn on their side, the contract with Softdisk. To fulfill this contract, they needed to make one game every 2 months. In this video, we'll take a look at these games. Now that Softdisk management has become aware of the games they've secretly made at id Software, an arrangement has been made to force them into making some games for them. As you've seen previously, one of them was Keen Dreams. In 1991, there were a few other games that had to be made before they could part ways, and as you'll soon be shown, they take full advantage of the optimization techniques created by John Carmack. Let's take a look at them. Dangerous Dave in the Haunted Mansion was the sequel to John Romero's Dangerous Dave game. Dave's mission is to rescue his brother Delbert, who became lost in the haunted mansion filled with evil creatures. It's a very basic side-scroller with some interesting levels. Your shotgun can be used to fight against monsters like zombies, knife-throwing goblins, and slimes. You can aim up and down at an angle, but you cannot jump and fire simultaneously. Ammunition is unlimited, but you can only have 8 shots at a time. Reloading is done automatically by standing still. The game is 10 levels long, and they're all packed with traps, monsters, and various jewels for points. I was fully capable of jumping over and dodging enemies and projectiles with a little bit of skill. Although there were some frustrating moments when you walk through a doorway and you instantly die, this is a solid, albeit short game. Dangerous Dave in the Haunted Mansion has also been ported to mobile phones sometime in 2008, so I would recommend this game if you take a bus or are in a similar situation where you just need to kill time on the go. The next game we have is a puzzle-solving game called Rescue Rover. You play as Roger, the clueless gentleman on the left, and your objective is to rescue your dog Rover, who was kidnapped by robots. You enter these robot rooms, and you have to figure out how to get through the obstacles. The game has multiple objects that make up the level, such as killer robots, a ball that rolls until it hits something, and mirrors that change the direction of laser beams. You manipulate these objects to gain access to Rover, push boxes to block lasers or create bridges on water, destroy robots by reflecting lasers towards them, and avoid robots that will blow a giant hole in your body. Scoring is based on how many times you attempt each level. If you die or the level becomes unsolvable, you have to reset the level and try again. The graphics and sound are acceptable. Good or bad, there's nothing that really stands out. It's a game that's easy to learn, but getting yourself through its 30 levels is much more demanding. And the story that sets the game up does raise some questions like, what do these robots want with your dog? And how does Roger even find these robot rooms? That doesn't matter too much since the game is surprisingly fun. I recommend this. I would also recommend its sequel, Rescue Rover 2. It's essentially the same puzzle-solving gameplay, but it does add some new mechanics like spiked floors, teleporters, and whirlpools. I found the levels to be a little more difficult than the first game, which of course can be attributed to the new mechanics and how they're used. This also includes some new artwork. Roger looks like an ordinary guy instead of a black leprechaun, but he's still oblivious to the kidnapping as always. So if you like a challenge in the puzzle-solving sense, give the Rescue Rover games a try. Next, we have Shadow Knights. It's a basic platforming game that seems to be influenced by the NES Ninja Gaiden games. The story is written in an included text file. Basically, you're a ninja with magical powers, as told by an ancient prophecy. The goal of each level is to just get to the end. Your basic attack is a slash from your sword, either standing up or in a crouching position. You can throw magic stars to attack from a distance, but this requires sufficient magic. There are no health items in the game, but you can use your magic to heal yourself. There's a lot of enemies in the game you have to get through. You have warriors, archers, and wild dogs all around the place. With your sword, you have to attack from as far back as possible so you can attack and move without taking damage. Your attacks have a split-second delay before they're executed, so you have to perform an attack earlier than what you may be used to. The overall presentation and interface of the game is just lacking. The controls will take some getting used to. Control is to jump, Alt is your sword attack, space is to heal, and the up arrow is to throw a magic star. Only some of these actions can be reconfigured. The graphics are not very good. There are places where everything just becomes camouflaged with the environment. This includes yourself, enemy projectiles, and even your life and magic bars. The game is challenging enough with the gameplay itself, but the graphics add unwanted difficulty by making the game hard to read. The PC speaker sound doesn't help either. You will get a headache after a while. I do not recommend this game. If you're into games in a similar style to this one, what I will recommend is Ninja Gaiden on the NES. The next game we have is Hovertank 3D. Some people claim this to be the first 3D game for DOS, but there was Microsoft Flight Simulator and Starglider before it. What makes this stand out is the highly optimized engine that only renders what the player can see in their field of view. This led to more detailed graphics at a smoother frame rate. The objective of this game is to rescue hostages around the level and then make it to the exit. There are some interesting mission briefings before each level, but the objective remains the same. You fire your cannon with control, and you can move faster by holding down Alt. You have no ability to move sideways. You can charge up your attack by holding down the control key, but this is pointless since the enemies die in one shot. There is a radar you can use to locate nearby enemies and hostages, which is absolutely necessary for this game. The enemies you encounter include an assortment of strange creatures and enemy hovertanks. If they come across one of the hostages, they will kill them in a rather gruesome fashion. The sprites are nicely detailed, but the walls and floors are just solid colors. It does have some sound and a bit of voice acting, and they're fine to listen to. Overall, Hovertank 3D is a very simple first-person shooter, the first of its kind. It's interesting to say the least, but you can't really ask for much. Finally, we have Catacomb 3D, The Descent. This is the follow-up to John Carmack's Catacomb games. The engine used to power Hovertank 3D was improved slightly for this game once the team heard about another game in development called Ultima Underworld. Instead of being in the protected cockpit of a tank or aircraft, it's just you, skin and bones, exposed to danger. You have textures on the walls, and even your hand is showing when you attack to reinforce the idea that you're not just playing the game, you're in it. The gameplay is essentially the same as in the first two games. You have your basic attack, along with the bolt and nuke spells. You can hold down the control key to charge up your attack, but I find this useless since firing multiple shots will lock the monsters in place until they die. You still need to search the walls by attacking them. It's much harder to do from the first-person perspective. Some of these walls hide the keys to unlock doors, so this can be just a bit frustrating. The overall level design is extremely short and simple. Some areas have a label that appear when you enter, such as the feasting hall and the kitchen, but they have no details or decorations to make them look like what they're supposed to be. The entire game is 20 levels in total, but when you have many levels that can be completed within a minute or two, this is not much. There are 3 difficulties to choose from, but you can beat the entire game on the hardest difficulty in less than an hour. It's another interesting game, but again, you can't really ask for much. Catacomb 3D was followed by 3 games in the so-called Catacomb Fantasy Trilogy: Catacomb Abyss, Catacomb Armageddon, and Catacomb Apocalypse. These were not created by id Software, though they were given some credit because of the engine. The games were made by Softdisk developers. It's also amusing to see these older games have a surprising degree of violence. Nintendo would never allow this on the NES or their fresh-released SNES without some changes to the graphics. But more importantly, you have to take note of all of the game's quality. They're all very short and simple. The goal here was to fulfill their contract with Softdisk to get them off their backs so they could focus on making the games they wanted to make. The 3D engine they had was a huge technological achievement for its time, but the next game we'll take a look at is what this engine is really known for.